Hello, everyone. I am so thankful that you are joining us today and this live streaming. So, super excited to have Irina here today to really talk about all things sleep and how sometimes we really can confuse using all of the data that's out there for our sleep hygiene, and then how it could actually backfire on us. And so while I am not the expert, she is. So I'm just going to introduce her. Irina is a sleep coach who specializes with people that are on this platform, busy lives, entrepreneurs, and professionals who want to address these sleep issues. And they are often having poor sleep hygiene that can sometimes be insomnia. And she really focuses on the behavior change. And it's all evidence based and practices that she has in her signature framework, Dream. So without further ado, I'll just let what else would you want to add, Irina, that we can just dive right in. Like, what got you started on sleep specifically? Because like your background is really amazing. It's in tech. So can we start there and just let everybody know why this is so important to you and a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. Talking about my favorite topic, which is sleep. And I will give you a little bit of like very high level background, like how did I get here?
Mhm.
Because before I became a sleep coach, I was an IT engineer for 16 and a half years. And that career was very like working in IT and trying to climb the professional ladder was it's very hard. It was a very high stressful life. And over the years, I got burnout multiple times. And one of the symptoms and the consequences of burnout is sleep problems. So I've been suffering with chronic insomnia for years. So in the beginning, it was like a night here and there, and it started to be more often to the point that it wasn't a question of if. So my sleep problem manifested is in waking up in the middle of the night. So I had no problem falling asleep, but around like 2 a.m. I was waking up on the clock. And at some point, it was not a matter of like if I'm going to wake up during the night. Is like
Just when.
when and for how long I will be awake. Sometimes it was taking me 1 hour, sometimes 3 hours to fall back asleep. Sometimes I was falling asleep just before my alarm went off.
Mhm.
So I know firsthand how it is to lie awake at night in the dark, worrying about the next day, how I will handle all the work and all the things that I have to do at work because I was exhausted night after night. So the wake up call for me was literally and figuratively when I fall asleep behind the wheel and I got into a car crash.
Mm.
And at that point, I realized that I have to do something. So back then, I was living in Ireland, and honestly, like I don't want to bash it, but like the medical system over there, it's even worse than here in the U.S. So I knew I didn't want to go to the doctor. I knew I didn't want to take sleep meds,
Mhm.
but I didn't know much about sleep. So I start reading every book, every podcast, listening at every podcast, reading blogs. And I tried so many things. Some worked, some didn't. It took me years until I figure out like how to manage my stress with my sleep. And even now, there are days when I'm still having some sleep problems, but the difference is how I'm reacting to
Mhm.
some couple of nights of bad sleep. And I know that it's temporary, and I have the tools handy to address the issues. But for me, the journey towards sleep coaching started when I moved here into the US. Like I'm originally from Romania. I lived in Ireland for a few years, and then I moved here into the US. So I have a little bit of experience working in different countries in different systems and cultures. But when I moved here, I was shocked seeing people around me sleeping very little and being proud of that because they were seeing as um, not sleeping and working until late as a badge of honor. It's like, you see how busy I am, you see how important I am. Like, I don't have time to sleep. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Sleep is a waste of time. And for me, like, going through all that struggle that I had with sleep and seeing how people are treating sleep here in the US, like, blew my mind.
Right.
And I start having conversation with colleagues at work and trying to explain the benefits of sleep. Like, how can you use sleep as a productive tool? How can you be way better and more proficient memory, emotion, like all the benefits that sleep brings if you allow your body to sleep enough. And you don't need like 12 hours to do the work. You could do the same work in 8 hours if you're fully rested. So this led me to the path of like creating a movement called like Let's Make Sleep Sexy.
Mhm.
And it was like the universe sent me like a message, because exactly, like, I was thinking to become a coach, and I wasn't I love the health system, but I wasn't sure exactly what niche would I choose. And exactly when I was having those thoughts and I start working on my business, one of the most famous institution out there for nutrition, called Precision Nutrition, just launched
Yeah.
a brand new certification called Sleep, Stress, and Recovery. And it was like the first time they were running it. I felt like that was a sign. And that was the beginning of me becoming a sleep coach. Then I got other certification. So initially I created my dream framework, as you mentioned, and I started working with people who were like a version of me, burning out, pushing, ignoring sleep. But while I was working with those people, I realized that some people were doing everything that I was saying and they still had sleep issues. And then
Mhm.
I realized, okay, that's something else. And that actually, it's called insomnia. And I went back to the drawing board and I got certified again, or like I did a training in the number one tool for addressing and treating insomnia, which is cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. So right now I'm working on my program for helping people who are dealing with insomnia. And that's why it's like, in today's conversation, I wanted to help educate people to understand is like, when do you know if you have insomnia? Do you know if your sleep issues are rooted in your behavior, into your lifestyle? And when should you use a tool, and when should you use another? Because the problem is, as we will go, you will talk later on, is that when you're using some tools that
Mhm.
are not in line with your problem, you can make that problem worse. And
Absolutely.
yes, and a lot of people with insomnia, they are trying to do the right thing for their sleep, and they're hearing on everywhere on the social media that, oh, sleep hygiene and do that and do that, and they're doing those things and they're not seeing changes, and then they think it's like something is wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm not
Yeah.
able to sleep again.
Yeah.
And there are two classes of people on social media. They're the people who are like promoting sleep hygiene, and there are the other people who are helping people with insomnia. The problem that I'm seeing is that the people who are helping people with insomnia are bashing the other people, saying is like, oh,
Mhm.
this is not so simple, this is not true. It's it's not like that. Those advices for the sleep hygiene are good, but they're addressed for different kind of people. And it doesn't mean that they don't work. They work in a different population for a different problem. While for these people with insomnia, we need to promote and teach the other tools that are in our toolkit. So that's why I'm trying to send this message and to educate people, and not saying is like this is bad or this is good. Is like, this is the tool to use when you have this problem, this is the tool when you have the other problem.
Right. Well, and I think you hit on so many things. And it's like we as a society are really good at burning ourselves out. And I hear you say so many different things that I see in my work. It's like that's why we have different modalities of getting to the solution for anything that we're doing in life in general. But like one size doesn't fit all, first of all. And just being really educated is the best way that we can make that aligned decision for our best self, like for our highest good. And, a lot of people struggle with sleep. And when you were saying all the things, like I used to be in that same boat where I would be like, awake at like 1 a.m. And like I'm a pretty early riser anyway, but you go through that wave of like being up at 1 and then you're counting the hours down. You're like, oh, I have to get up at X, and then that adds stress. And then you're thinking of your to-do list and you're like, what did I forgot this. And it's like you feel it and you're like just trying to like go back to sleep and you're trying to force yourself. It's like a whole thing, right? And so when you're thinking about this, a lot of people struggle with sleep, but they don't actually realize what's going on. So, can you explain why all sleep problems are not the same?
So there I'd like to put the sleep problems into two buckets. One, the sleep problems that are rooted in the behavior and the lifestyle. So, for example, you are getting sleep deprived because you're not offering the time to be asleep. Either you are by choice or because by the schedule and the environment. So, either you have to take care of kids or someone, or you're doing shift work, you're getting sleep deprived, or
Mhm.
you're like scrolling on social media, you are procrastinating bed because like you were so busy the entire day and you didn't have some me time, and in the evening, like before, instead of like going to bed, you feel like that's the only time that I have for myself, so I'm going to delay bedtime just to have some me time. And then like depending on how you decide to spend that time, you can binge watch on Netflix, you can scroll on social media, or you can do some other activities, but you're on purpose delaying the time. So you are shrinking the opportunity for you to fall asleep, to be asleep. The difference with this kind of people is like if you're offering the opportunity to be in bed and to be asleep, and with the proper behavior tweaks, you will be able to fall asleep, right?
Right.
Then on the other bucket, there are people with insomnia. So these people is like even given, sorry,
That's okay.
I have an alarm that reminds me of something. So for these people in this bucket, like even if give them the opportunity to sleep,
Mhm.
they can't fall asleep. And often people with insomnia, they're going to bed pretty early, like 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., 9 p.m., thinking that they extend the time in bed to optimize, like to have like more opportunity to fall asleep. But that behavior, that going to bed earlier, actually backfires, because to be able to fall asleep, you need to build sleep pressure. And you
Mm.
create sleep pressure by being awake and by being active and by being out of bed. The more you are in bed lying, the less your sleep pressure is, and the harder it is to fall asleep. And
You
often the people with
know
insomnia,
Oh, sorry to interrupt you. Can you tell us what sleep pressure is? Because I've never heard of this before.
um, okay, so how do I explain this? When you wake up, you
Mhm.
have no, your battery for sleep is zero.
Mhm.
And the moment you wake up, you start building sleep pressure. To be a little bit more technical, basically what happens when you burn energy,
Mhm.
there is some byproduct of that process, because energy, it's like you transform energy. So it's like when you burn energy, you create a substance called adenosine, and
Mhm.
that adenosine is it's binding to some receptor in your brain and in your body, and signals the brain that it's like indicator to say how sleepy you are.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay.
So the more you are awake, the more you move, the more energy you consume, the more of that substance, adenosine, builds in your body. And when you reach a specific threshold, your brain knows, oh, it's time to bed, to sleep.
To go to
So
sleep.
that's
Okay.
called sleep pressure. And there are two mechanisms involved, actually three mechanisms involved in generating sleep. And one is the sleep pressure, and the other is circadian rhythm.
Okay.
And the circadian rhythm is responsible for your alertness. And
Okay.
though they work in together, they're also independent. And that's why, so for example, think about it like if you had an all-nighter
Mhm.
towards the morning, even if you didn't sleep at all, you start having like a little bit of a burst of energy. And that's your circadian rhythm, because it doesn't it doesn't matter how much you slept.
Mhm.
Your body is going to follow the day night rhythm, and you have more energy, you are more alert. So circadian rhythm is responsible with the alertness signal.
Okay.
So, and there is the third system that will help us explain insomnia, is the vigilance system, or and it is like a safety mechanism, because like how we evolved, if you were in danger and if your body was screaming sleep, 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 like you had enough sleep pressure, your circadian rhythm saying is like it's night, it's time to sleep. But if you were attacked, you didn't want to sleep,
Right.
you didn't want to be the food for some predator. So there is a third system, which is the vigilance system, which allows you to stay awake and to override the other system to help you escape. And what happens in insomnia, often people think sleep is sleep is a threat. And not, you think consciously, like subconsciously your brain thinks sleep is a threat, and it keeps you awake. So
Wow.
often people with insomnia cannot fall asleep even if they've been awake for so long, because this hypervigilance system is overriding. And things like we're in threat on a threat.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and the more you stress about it, the harder it is to fall asleep.
yeah.
As you're saying, you're counting the hours, you're making mental calculation, you're thinking about like what's going to happen tomorrow at work if I don't sleep yet again.
Right. And so I guess that's kind of why it's almost better, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like sometimes it's almost better if you just get up for an hour and like, maybe I don't know. Like for me, I've gotten to the point where if it's like 3 a.m. and I'm waking up, I just allow myself to get up for a little bit. If I end
Yeah.
up feeling tired to go back to sleep, I'll do it. But is that right? Like, is that a
Yes,
good habit
it,
to have? Like,
it's
question?
absolutely right. And it's a part of the cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, which is called stimulus control. And what happens, we humans are very good at associating things.
Mhm.
So if we're lying in bed, awake and worried for long, our brain will associate bed with stress and being awake.
Yep.
That's why often people with insomnia have no problem sleeping on the couch. And but as soon as they go to bed, they're wide awake. It's like a switch turned on.
So interesting.
Um,
You are like speaking my language 1000%. Because I notice like that's one of the biggest reasons why I try to encourage people, like if they're going to do meditation, don't do it in your kitchen where you do all the activities and all the things, because that's literally what your energy is trained, your brain is trained to do. Um, and I just like that's so interesting to even make that connection. I feel like there's so many people there have to be like, oh my gosh, like I never even thought of this. Okay, so continue going. So like that's one of the things you're saying is like essentially we can train our brain where we sleep and or where we sleep, where we rest, and be able to build that habit over time. And just being aware of it is so question that leads into my brain is like, so if somebody recognizes this and they're like, oh my gosh, I have completely associated my brain with like the sleeping area is where I need to be the most active and awake. How do you fix that? Like, what do you, I mean, and I know it's not a one size fits all, but like, where do you start to really rebuild that habit?
so Basically, oh, there, this is such a hard question to answer
Yeah,
because there's so
I'm
many
sorry.
things.
Like,
No, no,
like,
no, no. I'm trying to think of like how to answer it simply, but it's part of the cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, where we apply two things, where we are trying to compress the time in bed. So
mhm,
when you're in bed, you're only asleep, and you go to bed, like usually we calculate like when to be in bed, when to you wake up.
mhm.
And if you go to bed, usually you go to bed when you're sleepy, and
Okay.
sleepy is different than tired. Sleepy means like if you're staying still, you cannot keep your eyes open. If you sit for a while, like you're able to fall asleep. Tired is like more from an energy perspective. I'm fatigued. But if you're lying, then you cannot sleep. So when you're sleepy, you go to bed. If it takes you more than 15-20 minutes to fall asleep, you wake up and you do something very low key, low stimulating, and then you go back to bed when you feel like you're able to fall asleep, and you repeat that. The same happens when you are waking up in the middle of the night. So you wake up, remove all the watches from the room because you don't want to start making calculations, start create anxiety. So a lot of people will ask me, is like, so how do I know when it's 50 minutes or 20 minutes? They're like, you guesstimate, it's like you do some self-awareness, some.
Right.
And honestly, like, I know when I wake up in the middle of the night, sometimes I can fall asleep, sometimes I know I cannot fall asleep like immediately. My energy is like.
Right.
So you get out of the bed. Like, the bed should be only for two things: for sleeping and for sex. That's the only thing that it's allowed in bed. No reading, no any other activities, no eating, no watching TV. So
Wow.
you're trying to recreate this association of bed
Mhm.
and bedroom, if it is possible, with sleep.
Okay.
And we are gradually doing that. And also, as a part of the cognitive behavior therapy, we are working with your thoughts, and it's the cognitive restructuring. Like, a lot of people, they have anxiety towards sleep. So, and they start catastrophizing, they start having like so many negative thoughts. And
Mhm.
honestly, when you're in the dark, all the thoughts like feel 10 times, 100 times more heavy than
Absolutely.
in general, like during the day.
Mhm.
So we're working with your thoughts as well. So I like the cognitive behavior therapy, because we're working with your body, with your biology. We work with your behavior, what you're doing, how you're doing, and we're working with your thoughts, with your mind, and how do you think about sleep and your anxiety.
Wow, that is so helpful in absolutely so many ways, and especially because I think you're hitting on a lot of things. Like, first, it's the stillness and the dark, and like that's when your thoughts all want to come, or and there's always that prep work, and that's what you're saying is like it's normal. And I think when we normalize, well, I say normal is such a vague word, but it's okay, more of a permission thing if you're experiencing that. It's more about seeing it and then being like, "Oh, I don't have to, it doesn't have to be this way. It's not how it always is," right? Like, we use
Yeah.
these phrases that I know, I'm sure you've heard, like, "I've always been this way. Like, this is how it always is." While yes, that is your true story right now, it's like that reframing and being able to just reset the habits that really help us.
Yeah.
And when do you feel that like when it's difficult. Okay, let me, how do I want to say this? So, how do you know we like when it's just difficult to shift out of the habit versus it being insomnia itself? Like, because you're talking about changing habits, and it's like because I've heard you say in the past, like people will come and say, "I'm trying all the things, I'm doing all the things, but it's not working." How do you like be able to decipher which one is actual insomnia versus I'm just not maybe doing the steps in like a specific order, or how do I modify that behavior change to match what I need, that kind of thing.
So one thing that I want to say before I ask this answer this question
Mhm.
is rooted in the definition of insomnia. Because insomnia, it's not only about not being able to sleep. There are people who are like short sleepers, sleep like 5 hours and they're fine. Um, Insomnia disorder is a subjective disorder. And when we are diagnosing insomnia, we don't look at numbers like how long were you asleep. So there is no metric. But what it is important is about the complaint on during the day, how it is affecting during the day. So it as you will see, is like it has like a component of like mindset and emotion, you know.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. The other thing that I do when I work with people, I do a very deep assessment to see what they're doing, their behavior. Like for example, when how much coffee they're drinking, when do they stop drinking coffee, how much activity they have during the day. So
Mhm.
again, when we're talking about sleep problems, they're not isolated to the sleep part and to the night. A good sleep starts the moment you get out of the bed, and a good day starts the moment you put your head on the pillow.
Right.
So when I'm looking at working with someone, I'm looking what they're doing during the day. So I'm trying to identify if there are any behavior that are influencing um, their sleep problems, because sometimes there are things that look like insomnia, but when we are tweaking and adjusting few things, the problem is solved.
I love it.
So, and with other people, we have to do more work. And there's so many things that we don't know, we don't realize that we're doing and that are affecting our sleep. And I'll give you a few, let
Yeah,
three examples. Okay.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
first of all, a lot of people in our current day, we are, and especially it happened more once we entered the pandemic and when
Mhm.
a lot of people were working from home, and they were excited that they don't have to do the commute, but at the same time there was no delimitation between their day, their work day and their personal life.
Right,
So, and I was guilty about that as well. Like I was working until late 8 9 p.m., shutting down my computer and going to bed.
right.
And imagine it's like how was my mind was like still thinking, still processing all the things.
Mhm.
So a big problem is that people do not create like a delimitation and a buffer time between the busyness of the day and the stillness of the night. Our
Mm,
brain and sleep is not an on off process. And imagine, like, to give you an example, imagine that you have like an airplane that it's flying with like, I don't know, 1,000 uh, miles an hour. I don't know exactly. So it's flying really fast, like, and you want to land the plane. You don't like from flying into stop
Right.
immediately, right? Like you
Mhm.
gradually start to reduce the speed, decelerate, going down, and then safely go land, right? It's the
Right.
same with sleep. Sleep is not an on-off process. You have to create this buffer place, buffer time to gradually wind down your body and your mind.
Mhm.
So often people do not do that, so they go to bed and then they cannot fall asleep because their mind is going 100 miles an hour, and then they think it's like I have insomnia because I cannot fall asleep even if I'm in bed. So that's one.
Or even that makes me think, like, they could even think they have anxiety because of that, and it's like, well,
Right.
it could be, we could have anxiety, but it's more that we just haven't shut the system down enough, like, or at all.
Yeah.
Because, we all know, and this is like the number one guilt factor is our phone. Like,
Yeah.
we are on it all the time, and it's like we don't realize that back end, like you're saying. Like, I literally saw a computer wheel in my head thinking about not shutting things down. And like, I loved how you described like the perfect day, is, just so beautiful there. And being able to really recognize that, we can't ask our body to do something it's not prepared to do, no matter what it is, and especially when it comes to sleep. And I really appreciate the way that you're describing that, because you mean, you think about the airplane in your brain and like the cartoons, and they're like, "Whoop," it would crash. It would
Right.
literally crash. So anyways, okay, so what's that second thing that you think, um,
um
from all of your stuff?
and I think this is the most common one is something that we call social jet lag, meaning we have a schedule during the weekdays and then
Mhm.
another schedule during the weekends. So we wake up at the same time and go to bed random times, but we
Yeah.
have like a schedule during the weekdays. And when the weekend comes, we sleep in and we try to catch up on whatever we sleep we lost. But this create an internal clock disalignment and confuses our body. Think about it like, if
Mm.
let's say you go to bed on weekends, on weekdays at 10:30, or like let's say the other way around, like you wake up on weekdays at 6 a.m. and
Mhm.
on weekends you wake up at 10 a.m. It's a four
Ooh,
hour
yeah, that's
difference. Let's say 9 a.m., 3 hours different.
that, yeah.
This would be the equivalent of flying from LA to New York on Friday and from New York to LA back on Sunday. It is
Mm,
like a 3 hour difference. There is a jet lag. How do you feel when you fly from East Coast to West Coast? You feel like
yeah,
crap. So
right.
we
Oh my
do
gosh.
this every week. And this is the number one thing that I do with all my clients, regardless of what kind of sleep problems we're working at, setting a wake up time every single day,
Mhm.
including weekends at the same time. And we work together to find like what's the right time for that person, for their circadian biology, for their schedule.
Mhm.
Sometimes like people want to be early birds because like we've been taught that it is another badge of honor to be a early riser, but their biology wants them to wake up at 7 a.m. And if let's say there are no schedule constriction for them to wake up at 7 a.m., but they say I want to wake up at 5 a.m. so that I work out in the morning, is like,
Mhm.
well, but that's not what your body wants. So I'm trying to work with them to find like what's the right time for you to wake up, to go to bed according to your social schedule and your body, right? So,
Right.
and I think like this is such an easy thing to fix. And yes, in the beginning it will be harder because like you want to sleep in on weekends, but as soon as you start doing that every single day, even during the weekdays, it will be easier to go to bed earlier, like at the
Mhm.
right time, and to wake up at the right time. And you know what? In time, if you do that, you will even wake up without an alarm because
Wow.
your body it's so good at
Mhm.
following a rhythm,
Wow.
the internal rhythm and the circadian rhythm.
Wow. I think that's like golden enough right there, just because it's so funny. I always give my husband a hard time. He's probably going to watch this later, but cuz I like to wake up at the same time every day. Like I don't I know, right? I'm like weird like that. I'm like I it sometimes I will find if I need the rest or I feel like I need the rest, I will do that. But for the most part, I really like that same rhythm, and I guess it makes sense that I'm just listening to my body. But I think that we forget that we can't catch up on sleep. And I know that we've been hearing more about this, and it's almost like, again, I think it's finding that right time, and then going into having a coach like you, where you're actually looking at what does that actually look like in my biology, because that does make a huge difference as to like where we're meant to be aligned with the time. So, and then leading into like, what's that third thing that you notice?
Before I jump into the third thing, I took and I note two things that you mentioned. You
Mhm.
said, I wake up at the same time. I know that it's weird. No, it's not
Oh,
weird.
thank
It's
you.
not weird. And this is one thing that I'm trying, like, this is part of my Make Sleep Sexy Again movement, is like normalizing these things. Like,
Mm,
just for you saying, I wake up at the same time and I know it's weird, that tells me so much about our culture.
right. Yeah, you called me out. I appreciate it. No, but I love that because it's like we say these things and it's funny because it's what I do with clients too. It's like being able to hear yourself in action. We're not always the best person to do that, but
Yeah.
someone else can be like, "Did you just hear what you said? Like, you
Yeah.
just did this." And that's funny. I didn't even realize I said it. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we can talk on another conversation about the catch up on sleep because we are already like 40 minutes into, and I want to give
This
you
is
like
so
the
good. It's been so
okay. I
cool.
want to give you the third example of how we affect our sleep in a negative way. So,
Mhm.
again, it's about our modern way of living where we live so much indoors, where there is poor natural light. And the light that we are having, like now I have some lights to make a little bit brighter for the video call, but that's not happening everywhere. And when I was working in an office, yeah, there was a nice building with big windows, but you know what we were doing? We were turning off the blinds because there was like glare in our screens, and people like were like, ah, it's too bright. But that's not what your body needs. You need a lot of light, and depending on how much light you have, your circadian rhythm, again, it's working with you and it's creating more alertness. So the
Right.
more light you get exposed, the more energy you have. And that also impacts how you when at night you feel sleepy. But
Mm.
there is another layer on this problem is that, okay, when night comes, what do? We turn on the lights. And it's like our body in the evening needs dark, or like in the evening it needs like just dim light, and at night we need darkness, right? So we're
Right.
living in a world where our days are dark and our nights are bright, and
Wow.
this is in opposition with our circadian rhythm. And people are popping in pills of melatonin trying to help their sleep. But
Mhm.
first of all, melatonin doesn't help with staying asleep. It's just like the guy with the gunshot at the start of the race. It's telling you when to sleep, not to sleep
Mm.
better.
Mm.
And we are depriving our body from releasing natural melatonin, which will help us to fall asleep naturally, taking some exogenous melatonin that have other consequences, and it's processed differently in the body than the one that we secrete. um, and then we cannot fall asleep, and then we go to the doctor and get sleep meds to help us with our sleep. So what I would recommend in this case is, like, first thing in the morning when you wake up, uh, go outside if it is possible. Even if it is cloudy and forecasted, there is still plenty of light, much more light than you get inside with all the lights on.
Mhm.
Be out for 30 minutes at least. If it is darker, longer. If you cannot go outside, drink your coffee close to the window. So
Mm.
have your morning routine, or have some, like, spend a part of your day close to the window. And if it is winter and it's dark outside, get a light box from Amazon. Like, they're $25, $30. You don't have to go to the expensive one. And those are called SAD box, lamp box.
Mhm.
SAD comes from seasonal affective disorder, and
Mhm.
they're often used in the northern part or southern, depends on
Depends on where depends on
which hemisphere you are, where like the days is short, and you need more light exposure. So um, get at least 50 to 30 minutes, place that light box in front of you, like a feet apart, and drink your coffee, do whatever you do in the morning, eat your breakfast while that light is in your face. At lunch, if it is possible, go for a walk. uh,
Mm.
Moving outside, it has like multiple benefits. Moves your body, you get light exposure, and
It's
it,
like you ground your energy, like you change the environment. There's so many benefits to being outside in general, but yeah.
yeah. And in the evening, as soon as the sun sets, dim the lights. Do not use ceiling lights. You want the lights to come from the floor or from like desk lamps, not ceiling light, because there is no sun in the sky. So why should the light come from the above, right? Dim them. There is no need of blue light blockers. Just there are new studies showing that the light from our screen, it does not affect our sleep as we thought. There
Mhm.
is like very little delay in the sleep, but you want the entire environment to be dim. And
Yep.
at night, if it is possible, make it pitch black,
Mm, I love it. I just
right?
can't believe how much like, you really made me realize how we do live in that opposition, like, I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, where it's like, "Yep, we're dimming the we're dimming it in the day, and we're amping it up at night, and we're wondering why we can't sleep." Like
And another thing that affects our sleep, and we don't think about it, is the temperature. We live in houses with air conditioning and very highly regulated in temperature, but our body temperature follows a circadian rhythm, and during the night is when our body temperature is the lowest. And if your room is too hot, then it will make it harder for your body to fall asleep and to stay in deep stages of the sleep.
yeah,
So
wow.
there's so many things that you can do, and like this kind of small things could
Mhm.
help and improve your sleep, but those are insignificant if you have insomnia and your brain is the one that keeps you awake. So
Right.
yes, we
Yeah.
can work in parallel to help your body to support good sleep and your behavior and your environment, but if the brain and your mind is the one that keeps you awake, that's where is the difference, right?
Yeah. Wow. You're, like, making me think. I'm just thinking of, like, all these this is a totally different conversation we should have sometime, is, like, all of the things that we've created to make our lives easier are really making our lives harder in some capacity. I'm not saying that we should like go back to Little House on the Prairie days, although when I'd be okay with it. It's still like we have to really consider the use of ease within our day and really pay attention to these things. And I just like mind blown right now thinking about just the light and dark difference, but then it just has me thinking about all these other things. I'm like, wow.
I think we live in a world where we're not used with discomfort anymore, and very little discomfort feels overwhelming for us.
Wow.
So when you go to bed, you want to be like 65, 68 degrees in your room, and a lot of people cannot even think about that temperature because it feels so cold.
Right.
In this case, like you can wear socks and some warmer on the extremities, because what's important, it's not necessarily the whole body, is the core body temperature that needs to go down. And you eliminate heat, you shed heat on the extremities. So by warming out the extremities, and a lot of people who have not shingles,
Yeah.
Raynaud disease, where they have like problem with extremities, they're more predisposed to have sleep problems
Mm.
because they don't have that heat exchange. So keep the temperature low and in your bedroom. And if you feel too cold, like put socks, put a warmer under the blanket around the feet area,
Wow.
um, while keeping the room cold. But
Wow.
yeah, it's so hard for us to feel discomfort in nowadays, and that comes with a price.
Yeah, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, we could have a whole conversation about that because I feel that way on the energetic level. I'm just like, yep, trying to figure out the things that are going on internally from the energy place can be that whole challenge. And you just said it so beautifully. Oh my gosh, like gold moment there. We didn't even get through all of the questions, but I just really appreciate you coming and giving us your time and I mean, everything that you have said, I know has clicked with someone. And if anybody has questions, please make sure to ask them. We'll go back after the recording and answer them because the great thing is we're not distracted by any of it, but that's the hard part. How can people connect with you, work with you? What's the best way for them to reach out if they're seeing themselves in this and they're like, man, I never considered these different things. And I know that I want to have better sleep because I understand that it's going to give me more energy throughout my day and just a better life in general.
Yeah, so the best way to find more about my work and how to work with me is on my website,
Okay.
irinamacare.com.
Okay.
And the first thing that I do with a new person is like set a free call to discuss to see if we're a good fit and if their problem are in my scope of practice. I am a sleep coach. I'm not a doctor, and I am making sure that your problem is not in the medical realm. And if I do discover that, then I make sure that I guide you in the right direction to see the right specialist and to get the treatment that you need. And we can work in parallel with while you're working with your medical provider. But this is very important to understand that I do not take in everybody. And first, we need to have a conversation to see that we are a good fit and that if my services are actually a fit for your problem. So
Yeah.
there you can schedule a call with me, but you can also find me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, if you want just to learn things.
Yeah, I love this. Well, I appreciate your time, and I love and honor that you are very open about that. Like, I might not be the person for you, but I'm going to make sure first. And not a lot of people do that. A lot of people are just like, "Oh yeah, sure, come on, I'll work with you," and then yeah, we won't go down that route. But just thank you so much for your time today. And if anybody wants to connect with her, you now know how to. We'll make sure that we put your website information out there and all the things. I hope that you guys have a beautiful rest of today, and her and I will definitely be on another conversation. So, anyways, thanks everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.